Thank you, Senators. Now the reading of the journal. Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate dispense with the reading of the journal.
Senator moves to dispense with the reading of the journal. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Message and petitions, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, there are none.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Committee reports. Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Mr. President, I move the Senate dispense with the reading of the committee reports.
Senator moves to dispense with the reading of the committee reports. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you, Senator. Next, the reading of titles of the bills and resolutions. Senator Polk.
Mr. President, I move the Senate dispense with the reading of the titles of the bills and resolutions.
Senator moves to dispense with the reading of the titles of bills and resolutions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Introduction of guest. Introduction of guest. Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll move to the calendar. Senator Kirby, you're recognized. Senator Kirby is recognized.
Go to the calendar. Senator Hobson, do you wish to take up pass and retain items 1 through 5? Rules calendar, Senator Michelle, pass and retain that. It's placed on the calendar. Item 7, concurrence, non-concurrence. Pass and retain. The general calendar, items 8. Senator Barnett, pass 8, 9, 10, and 11. The second page, items 12, 13, pass and retain. Senator Barnett, those items. 14, education. Pass and retain is placed on the calendar. Do you want to take up that or pass it? Pass and retain. Item 15, pass and retain is placed on the calendar. 16, Senate Bill 2113. Okay. Senator DeVar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Call up item 16, have the title read.
Please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2113, critical race theory, prohibit. Make the usual motions.
Senator DeVar makes the usual motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed no. The ayes have it. Senator DeVar.
Move for adoption of the committee sub in lieu of the original bill.
Senator moves adoption of the committee sub in lieu of the original bill. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed no. The ayes have it. Senator DeVar.
I ask that you recognize Senator McClendon to explain the bill.
Senator McClendon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 2113 is a very simple bill. It prohibits school districts, universities, community colleges from requiring students to adhere to any tenet providing that one race, sex, or ethnicity is inherently superior or inferior to another. And with that, I'll be open to any questions, sir.
Senator Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for the bill to be read.
The bill be read?
Yes.
Read the bill.
Read it. Committee substitute for Senate Bill number 2113, an act to create new section 3713-2 Mississippi Code of 1972 to provide that no public institution of higher learning community, junior, college, school district, or charter school shall direct or compel students to affirm that any sex, race, ethnicity, religion, or national origin is inherently superior, or that characteristics to provide that no distinction or classification of students shall be made on account of race other than the required collection of reporting of demographic information, to provide that no course of instruction shall be taught that affirms such principles, to provide that no funds shall be expended by the State Department of Education, any entity under the department's jurisdiction, state, school district, charter schools, community junior colleges, Mississippi Community College Board, the Board of Trustees of state institutions of higher learning, or public institutions of higher learning for any purpose that would violate this act, to provide for the severability of the act and for related purposes. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Mississippi, Section 1, following shall be codified as Section 3713-2, Mississippi Code of 1972. 3713-2, no public institution of higher learning, community, junior college, school district, or public school, including public charter schools, shall direct or otherwise compel students to personally affirm, adopt, or adhere to any of the following tenets. A, that any sex, race, ethnicity, religion, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior. B, that individuals shall be adversely treated on the basis of their sex, race, ethnicity, religion, or national origin. 2, no public institution of higher learning, community, junior college, school district, or public school, including public charter schools, shall make a distinction or classification of students based on account of race, provided that nothing in this subsection shall be construed to prohibit the required collection or reporting of demographic information by such schools or institutions. 3, no public institution of higher learning, community, junior college, school district, or public school, including public charter schools, shall teach a course of instruction or unit of study that directs or otherwise compels students to personally affirm, adopt, or adhere to any of the tenets identified in subsection 1A and B of this section. 4, no funds shall be expended by the State Department of Education, any entity under the Department of Education's jurisdiction or purview, a school district, public charter school, community, junior college, Mississippi Community College Board, the Board of Trustees of state institutions of higher learning, or a public institution of higher learning for any purpose that would violate the provisions of this section. 5, the provisions of this section shall be severable, and if any provision of this section or the application of such provision to any person or circumstances is declared invalid for any reason, such declaration shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this section. Section 2, this act shall take effect and be enforced from and after its passage.
Did you have a question? Finish that up, Senator Simmons?
I do, Mr. President.
You're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator, for yielding. Why is this bill needed?
I had so many constituents in my district that were concerned over the teachings that they have heard from around the country. They wanted to make sure that this was not going to be a problem in Mississippi. So that's why this bill was brought forward.
So it's a problem across the country. Is it a problem in Mississippi?
Well, we try to make laws for the future as well as today. So that's what this is for.
Senator, do we teach math in our schools?
Yes, sir.
And should we teach math in our schools accurately?
Absolutely.
Do we teach science in our schools?
Yes, sir.
Should we teach science in our schools accurately?
Absolutely.
What about race and racism? Should we teach race and racism in our schools accurately?
I believe we're doing that, and this bill is not changing the way anything about our past.
Okay.
All this bill says that no child shall be told that they're superior or inferior to another. That's all this bill does.
Okay. So all the history in the state of Mississippi, all the way up to the changing of the state flag, all of that still can be taught in our schools with the passage of this bill?
Yes, sir.
and how we got to the point that we got to in 2020 when we changed the flag. We can also teach the true history about that in our schools, if this bill becomes law.
That is my intent, yes, sir.
Okay.
All this bill does is no child is superior or inferior to another, and we should not teach that someone is.
Okay. The horrific thing that happened to Mamie Teal's son, can we teach that in our schools with the passage of this bill?
Absolutely. I watched the movie last night, as a matter of fact.
Okay. And the fact of how civil rights workers came to this state from all over the country to help African Americans to enjoy the full rights of citizenship. We can still teach that in our schools if this bill becomes law.
This bill says no child should be told that they are superior to any other, regardless of their sex or race or religion or ethnicity. It's very simple.
And Senator, I will end like I started. Have you identified one teacher, one school district, anywhere in the state of Mississippi where this is happening?
I have not personally, no, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have several questions. Next is Senator Horn. Have a question, Senator Horn?
Question.
You're recognized for a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, you yield.
Yes, sir, I do yield.
Thank you. I want to follow some of the line of questioning that Senator Simmons just presented. Would you say that intrinsically in this country, I mean, you've heard the phrase, "This is a white man's country," have you not?
I don't know how this is germane to the bill, sir.
I want to get to that, but would you respond to my question? Have you ever heard the phrase, "This is a white man's country"?
I'm up here to present a bill. That's all I'm up here to do, sir.
All right. So would you agree that historically in this country and everywhere to the victor goes the history, that history is written generally in the eyes of the guy who won? Would you agree with that?
Senator Horn, this bill is not changing history. All this bill does is
Okay,
to say,
to my point, would you agree that intrinsically, based on how our history is taught to us, that it favors the guy who's in charge generally?
well, Mississippi Department of Education is in charge of our history curriculum. So that should be a question that is directed towards them.
Well, and what I'm trying to get to is that our history books are in place. Would it surprise you to know that there's, in Mississippi schools, in a state that's at a 40% African-American population, that we don't teach anything about African-American history along any sufficient lines or significant lines in our history books today?
It surprises me that all students aren't taught history.
Well, and again, history is in the eye of the beholder oftentimes. Would you agree with that?
That could be your opinion, yes, sir.
Okay. So we're in a country that historically, by its practices, its principles, its institutions, its laws, have essentially said, I'm better than you because of the way that I'm writing this history.
The question, I'm assuming this is a question, sounds like you're in agreement with this bill, that you don't believe that any race or sex is superior or inferior to another. And that's all this bill does. And I agree that way, sir.
So if we are to correct our history books, not claiming any superiority of one race or group over another. But if we are to tell a balanced story, so to Senator Simmons' point, the mitigating event that a lot of people point to is when we talk about the startup of the civil rights movement in modern times, for example, was the assassination of Emmett Till. We don't teach that in our schools to a great extent. So if somebody were to offer curriculum on the story of Emmett Till, how would it be affected by this bill?
Well, that's going to be up to the state Department of Education to come up with the curriculum. And then each school district decides which direction they go with that. Now, the state auditor will be the one to decide whether it's they're teaching something that is not correct. All this bill does is say that no child is superior or inferior to another. That's all it does. Now, we should be teaching history, whether, Irish, Spanish, we're all different nationalities that came here. We should also be teaching about Native Americans.
But we're not.
I didn't make that decision, Senator Horn.
It's again because our history books are slanted towards one perspective. And my question is, if there is an opportunity to balance out that perspective, what impact would this bill have on trying to balance the storytelling out?
This bill has no intent of changing history whatsoever. All it does is say that we're not going to tell any child that they're superior or inferior to another.
Give me one example in these United States where that's the case.
I'm not a statistic person. All I know is that there is enough people in District 1 in Mississippi that was concerned that this could be part of a curriculum that we would tell a group or race or a sex of child that they are inferior to another. So we're getting into weeds that we shouldn't be in.
And I agree 100%. This is a problem in search of a solution rather, in search of a problem. We don't have this problem in Mississippi. We're not telling the wholeness of Mississippi's history. And if I were to tell you that, would you agree with me that in a state with our demographics, that we ought to be teaching more about African American history? Would you agree with that?
I'm not familiar enough with the curriculum. That's up to, again, Board of Education, and that's up to each district. I can't speak for each district, no, sir.
So if a school district decides, oh, well, we've got a 90% African American population in our school, and I found a curriculum that speaks to telling a more balanced history about African Americans, because the population I'm dealing with needs to know their history. And yet, would you be surprised if I were to tell you that we have maybe one course in the state of Mississippi that teaches African American history, and very few school districts select that curriculum as part of what they impart to their particular school district, students in their particular school district? Would you be surprised with that?
I would say that I would carry those concerns to the Department of Education.
Mm-hmm. So if the Department of Education decides, oh, well, you're absolutely right, Senator, we're going to offer a curriculum that tells a more involved aspect of history as it relates to the African American presence in this country. We're going to teach a curriculum and select books off of our approved list of books to offer to that school district. and we're going to be very intentional about teaching African American history. Will this bill prevent that?
It's not in my intent, no, sir.
But don't you think, wouldn't you agree that any school district that might want to do that this bill will put a chilling effect on their desire to tell a more balanced history based on the demographics of their school population?
I don't think so, no, sir. This is strictly about telling a child in the classroom that they are inferior or superior to another.
Senator, there's a lot of hype and furor around this issue, and I just, for the life of me, can't figure out what we're trying to accomplish here. So can you define, and I know it's not a reference explicitly in here, but everybody's calling this the critical race theory bill. Can you define what the critical race theory is?
I think this bill defines it.
Would you share that with the body?
That no child should be told that they're superior or inferior to another.
And that's the critical race theory.
Everyone has their own opinion what critical race theory is. To me, that's what's in this bill.
Thank you, Senator McClendon. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for the question, Senator Horn. I respect your opinion.
Next, Senator Norwood, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, Senator Horn asked my question regarding, I'd like to ask it again.
You ready? You yield to Senator Norwood?
Yes, sir, I do yield to Senator Norwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator McClendon. Could you define again what critical race theory is?
Well, to each person, I believe there's so many different definitions out there. I'm going to say this one more time, just so I can be clear and everyone can understand what. I had so many people come to me that they were concerned about what children could possibly be being taught in Mississippi. So I contacted our school superintendent, and he said, no, sir, not to my knowledge, we aren't. I contacted Department of Education, Ms. Carrie Wright. She said, no, Senator, not to my knowledge. But I did have enough constituents that were concerned over this, over national news that's been, and I know you can take national news with a grain of salt, but there were so many issues and concerns that people had about this. I just made it plain and simple. No child should be told that they're superior or inferior to another. And it's plain and simple. The studies that I've done on it, it is out there.
So would you agree, Senator, that this is very difficult? Would you agree we get several calls about several different issues, and every issue that we get calls about, we don't see no reason to codify it into legislation? How many states have enacted such legislation?
I can't speak for that.
Well, you said that you received calls. How many calls did you receive?
Not only calls, social media. In my community, my face is pretty recognizable. In Kroger, whether it be Walmart, Kroger, wherever restaurants, people would come up to me and say, hey, I've heard about this deal they're teaching in schools. I said, well, it's not. Well, how do we keep something like this out of our schools? So I've had numerous, more than I can count.
Would you believe, Senator, that I've talked to or been in conversation with approximately 26 superintendents across this state, none of which have voiced a concern or this as a problem, which they have many students under their leadership. Would you believe that I have talked to more than 50 pastors across this state that say that this is not a problem in our state? Would you believe that?
If you said it, yes, sir.
Many of those pastors and many of those superintendents do not look like me. Many of those pastors and those superintendents, I am sure, based on their political affiliation, is not the same as mine. Mr. President, I'd like to speak on the bill at the appropriate time. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
And could I answer Senator Norwood?
Certainly.
Senator Norwood, I appreciate your comments and I respect you. As a matter of fact, I respect you so much, I gave you a copy of the bill, I believe, before I even dropped it. And I gave numerous copies out to the Democrats and Republicans. But I'm not the only one that has signed on to this bill. There are 20 other senators, and they've had similar concerns in their districts. So I will yield at them.
Okay, next, Senator Jordan, do you have a question?
Yes, sir.
You yield Senator Norwood for a question.
Yes, sir, Senator Jordan.
Senator Jordan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you, Senator colleague.
Yes, sir.
You agree that this bill takes us back to the 60s. You may not have been born, but you have heard about the 60s. You saw the movie last night of the Embitio case, and night before last I was on talking about it, what happened. Here we are, 2022, want to go back to the same kind of system. Mississippi has grown tremendously among young people since then. This is not needed. It's a waste of time, your time and mine. I know there are people out there got fear, but as a good senator, you can relate to them that there's no basis for it. All of us are in this jam together. Isn't that what Strawberry said to the jelly? We're in this jam together. Mississippi is trying to move forward. What you're going to create, many people are not going to teach any kind of history up to the status that it's supposed to be taught. And as a result, we'll lose more teachers. Mississippi doesn't need this. We need more cohesiveness. And I think the students are doing better than we are in this kind of cohesiveness and working together. That's all we need. And there's a lot of fear out there, I agree, but it doesn't have any basis unless you want to return back to the old system. And I would hope and pray that that's not the reason for this piece of legislation. So it's not necessary. Why create a problem when you don't have it? It's nobody after anybody. If anybody should be concerned about racism more, it ought to be those of us whose parents watered this land with their tears and made it rich with their bones. Those are my ancestors. And yet we're willing and open-minded enough to try to work with those who enslaved us to say, here we are now at a point where we can get together. We have a colleague here, 52 senators making laws that we ought to be able to move forward. But here we are bringing back something we don't need, which will create problems.
Senator Jordan, do you have a question?
My question is, why is this bill necessary? I know what you have said about your district, but will you agree with me that it's not necessary?
No, sir, I believe it is necessary. I believe that we should not be teaching any child that they're superior or inferior.
Nobody's doing
Or
that.
should adhere to it.
It's not being done. Nobody teaching any superiority,
We're not erasing what our history is.
but nobody's teaching that. Even tell your constituent that that fear has no base, and nobody teaching racism. Nobody teaching that.
And we're going to make sure they don't.
Now, you don't have to create a problem to get that done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that bill does.
Senator Jordan, I appreciate your comments, and I duly respect you from all you've been through and what you bring to this chamber, and I thank you for your question, sir.
Senator Hickman, do you have a question?
Yes, Mr. President.
Do you yield Senator Hickman for a question?
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
President.
Hickman.
Thank you, Senator, for yielding. I know you've answered this question many times in a way, but my first question is, what exactly does this bill do?
I'm going to recite it. No public institution of higher learning, community junior colleges, school districts, or public school, including public charter schools, shall direct or otherwise compel students to personally affirm, adopt, or adhere to any of the following tenets.
If you would, I've heard that part, but does it ban critical race theory?
It says that any sex, race, ethnicity, religion, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior. We don't want that.
So does it ban critical race theory?
In my eyes, yes, sir.
Would you be surprised to know that that's not exactly what critical race theory is, and this bill actually doesn't ban critical race theory?
Well, in my opinion, it does, and 20 other senators that signed on to this bill, it does. So I respect your opinion, but I would respectfully agree to disagree, sir.
Understood. Does it ban a certain curriculum, or does it ban a certain set of curriculums? Have we looked at any curricula and say this curriculum would be bad?
That would be up to the Department of Education to decide that.
And I think you stated that while talking to the Department of Education, they indicated that none of our schools are teaching this, anything that would fall under this curriculum.
To their knowledge, no, sir.
And has the Department of Education asked for such a bill? Have they said, we need this because some people are trying to teach it, or this is something that, you know, is something that we think is about to happen?
No, sir, but I live in DeSoto County. We have 35,000 students in our school district. We have 43 schools from elementary to high school, and I have been overwhelmingly asked to make sure this does not happen. And I went to senators on both sides of the aisle on this, and 20 said, yes, we've heard about this and we do not want anything of this nature in our curriculum.
Okay. So having read the bill, and I understand that you've read the bill, do you think it's possible that this bill could be subject to wild misinterpretations?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty clear.
And do you concede that it'd be possible that a teacher would not touch the subject of race at all because there's a broad bill talking about inferiority or superiority of the races?
No, sir. Our history is our history, and we have to embrace our history. And what this bill does is to say that no one will tell a child in that classroom that they are below them or above them. And if they do, they will, that will be up to the school system to bring that. And
do you think that it would be bad if we had teachers per se teaching students that, you know, certain poisons were good to digest or take?
This is not about teachers. This is about school districts and a change in administration.
So would you think that it would be bad if a school district adopted a curriculum that would teach our children that there are certain poisons that they should take?
Let's repeat that one more time.
Do you think that it would be bad if certain school district adopted a curriculum that would tell our students that they should take or drink certain poisons?
If it tells them that a child is superior or inferior, I think they should not.
Say that again.
If a school district says that a child is superior or inferior in modern day time, then they should not. No, sir.
And my question gets to the point that if there are a bunch of curriculums or things that could be taught that are bad, do you think we should create bills for every one of those things, even if there's not even an inkling of evidence that our teachers or our school district are teaching them?
If there is enough concern by tax-paying parents of what their children are being taught, then I think yes, it should be addressed.
And do you know how many parents, or how many tax-paying citizens are concerned about this?
I can only speak for my district, and it's numerous.
And so we should, as senators, we should just draft bills for every concern that our constituents have.
We owe it to our constituents to do what they want, and this is exactly what I'm doing.
And are you aware of that maybe the majority or minority of your constituents, the majority or minority of the state that's worried about this concept?
I've had maybe one say don't do it, and probably hundreds say please do it.
How many emails in your Senate account about bills and stuff do you receive on a daily basis?
I have no idea.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield.
Senator Blackman, do you have a question? Where are you?
I yield to Senator Blackman.
You yield to Senator Blackman? Senator Blackman, I understand.
What'd you say, baby?
2 minutes from your desk. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. President, for questions. Do you yield?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, he did yield.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. President. Are you aware that white Americans often feared and resented Native Americans that they encountered?
Could you repeat that one more time, please, ma'am?
Are you aware that white Americans often feared and resented Native Americans they encountered?
I don't know how this is.
I asked you a question, then I'm going to follow up. Are you aware of that?
No, ma'am.
So, if it has been presented in history that white Americans felt that they were superior to Native Americans, this would still be taught, correct?
That would be up to the school system.
Are you aware that white Americans, and in particular in the South, grew their fortunes by growing cotton and resorted to violent means to take land from their indigenous neighbors? Are you aware of that?
What I've read in history books.
And this could still be taught in history if this becomes law.
I have no intention of changing history with this. All I'm doing is saying that we will not teach or tell a child that they are superior or inferior to another.
So historically, when white Americans thought that they were superior to the indigenous people who occupied this land, if that is taught, would not those individuals who hear that think perhaps that they are superior to Native Americans?
Now, what someone thinks and what they're taught are two different things, though.
Would you not think, would you not, if they were taught and their teacher, who all of us hold in high regards as we are growing up, would we not think, would those students not form an opinion as to whether what this teacher is saying is correct? And perhaps I am better than those Native Americans.
Senator Blackman, I respect your opinion, but I'm not here to change history at all. And what a child thinks, that when they hear a teacher, say a lesson, teach a lesson, that's what we're doing in education. We're getting that child to think. But now, I don't want any child to be told that they're superior or inferior to them because they're male or female or whatever their race is. That's all this is doing.
Well, you just finished saying you can't determine what a person thinks, and then you're saying a teacher, their purpose is to help that child learn to think.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, would you not think that whatever you're putting out there to that child, that's what that child is going to absorb?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But just like I don't know what you're thinking right now, and you have no idea what I'm thinking right now.
Are you familiar with the Holocaust?
Yes, ma'am.
And that one was it based upon religion? And I think in this you say also religion. So we would still be able to teach the Holocaust. And was that not a race that thought it was superior to another race?
What I know about World War II is my grandfathers fought in it. And they were fighting for freedom.
It was not related to a race being superior over another race?
I am not that astute on Nazi Germany.
And this could still be taught in our schools, correct?
I'm not trying to change history. I'm just trying to say that no child should be taught that they're inferior or superior to another. It's really simple.
And then I think it was in the history of Mississippi, I believe it was from like 1870, well actually it was since 1861. When Mississippi formed, when the Constitution, 1890 Constitution was formed, and it was created to eliminate freed blacks who had started participating in the political process and in the economic development of this state. That would still be taught.
I am not changing what we're teaching. I'm not changing. I am just stating that no child shall be told that they should adhere to, that they are superior or inferior to another. When
the state of Mississippi, throughout the Reconstruction period of 1865 to 77, suppressed the now 40% of the black citizens of this state, and it was because the white citizens of this state thought that they were superior to the black citizens, that will continue to be taught?
Again, we're not changing history.
So it shall continue to be taught.
Senator Blackman, all we're saying is that no child shall be told or taught that if they're looking at them, that they are superior or inferior to another.
Okay, in your bill, you say that no funds shall be expended if something like this were to occur.
Yes, ma'am.
So how is this going to be enforced?
That will be up to the school districts, the Department of Education, and the state auditor.
Okay, is that provided in here?
No funds shall be extended by the State Department of Education, any entity under the Department of Education's jurisdiction.
No, sir, I'm talking about the enforcement mechanism. You said it's up to the school districts, the Department of Education. So can you tell me, how does this, so does a parent go to the superintendent and say, my child has been taught this? Or does a student go and say, I'm being taught this? How is that going to work?
Well, just as any complaint is brought to the school districts, I would hope they would assess the problem and then carry on from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Senator Blackman.
Question. Senator McDaniel, question?
Yes, Mr. President, I have a question.
You yield, Senator McDaniel.
I do yield to Senator.
Senator McDaniel, recommend.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, you're doing a fine job. I appreciate your efforts here. I did not anticipate this debate to take place today. I guess I'm glad it did, so I'll do my best to be short. There's been some attempt to have you define critical race theory, and it seems that's where the conversation always begins. We're asked to define critical race theory. You would agree with me that it's sometimes difficult to define, correct?
I think there are a number of different opinions on critical race theory.
And the reason it's difficult to define is that critical race theory in and of itself is about an interdisciplinary body of work that was coined in 1989. It applies to critical race theory, critical legal theory, and it's based on what's called a postmodernist approach, correct?
There are views of that, yes, sir.
And because it's based in a philosophical approach called postmodernism, it's based in subjective realities. In other words, postmodernism deals with subjective, how we feel, as opposed to objective, what we can prove, correct?
If that's your opinion, yes, sir.
And so when we talk about critical race theory, we're not talking about simply a subject matter. We're talking about a framework by which education is applied, correct?
Say it one more time, please.
When we talk about critical race theory, we're not talking about a simple subject matter. We're talking about the way a framework is applied in education, correct?
My view of what critical race theory is in this bill, that no child shall be told or taught that they are superior or inferior to another.
It sounds to me like what you're trying to do is to determine what is objective fact versus what is subjective theory, correct?
There's nothing about fear in this. It's strictly, we don't want our children, whether they're male or female or whatever their race may be.
Right, and I'm with you, but let's talk about that for a second, because our teachers only have a certain amount of time in any given day to teach, correct?
Correct. Thank you, Senator Jordan.
Certain number of hours, correct?
Yes, sir.
So the state of Mississippi, the taxpayers of this state, should have some say in precisely what is being taught during that very condensed time frame, correct?
Yes.
And frankly, we don't want our children hearing about theoretical subjective theories We want them to hear about objective facts, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's keep going here. It was suggested earlier that the laws in this country speak solely on behalf of the white man. That the laws of this country somehow indicate that white people are better than others. And that's one of the inferences that critical race theory teaches. The institutions are inherently racist. You are aware that in 1964, the federal government prohibited discrimination across the board in the 1964 Civil Rights Act, correct?
I am, yes, sir.
So as to that system, if they claim that the government is somehow systemically racist, by definition, the government cannot be systemically racist, can it?
No, sir.
And there are dozens of regulations and statutes and organizations and commissions and agencies and court decisions that specifically say that discrimination in this country is prohibited, right?
Yes, sir.
And if you do discriminate in this country, you violate any number of those laws and you can face a criminal fine, correct?
Correct.
You can be sued civilly, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if the theory of critical race theory is accurate, that is, that all of our institutions are inherently racist and have to be rectified, one would think with all the civil rights lawyers we have in this country, there would be a litany of lawsuits to correct that problem, right?
Yes, sir. I'm not sure which way you're going, but this is a simple bill. I'm gonna say it strictly says.
It is. The point of the matter is, this bill is simple. And it's a question of objective fact versus theoretical notions of what people believe. And I agree with your bill completely. And I'm trying to walk us through it as best I understand it. As to the question Senator Blackman raised, there seems to be this argument that somehow historical fact won't be allowed to be taught if this bill is passed. That's not correct, is it?
No, sir, we're not changing history.
Historical fact is historical fact. We can look back, objectively speak to that, and teach that still, even if this bill is passed, correct?
Yes, sir.
What you're attempting to do is to make sure that we don't take that objective fact, turn it into a theory, and then tell a child in a modern classroom that he is inherently inferior.
Not only I, but 20 other senators signed onto the bill. Yes, sir.
Right, right. You know, the great irony of this is that had this bill been considered 60 years ago, it would have been a progressive piece of legislation that people should have championed and hopefully would have championed. Here you are now championing that bill, and I think it's a good idea and I appreciate it. Thank you.
I was in hopes that we'd get 52 signatures on it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Senator England, do you have a question?
I'd like to speak on the bill at the proper time, Mr. President.
We'll put you on the list. Thank you. Senator Blunt, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. President, question.
You yield Senator Blunt for a question. Do you yield?
Yes, sir, Senator Blunt, please.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator McClendon. We've established that this is not happening in the state of Mississippi. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, sir.
Okay. So, should we amend this bill to prohibit any teaching in the state of Mississippi that would say that the sun rotates around the earth? Do we know that teachers in Mississippi are teaching our students that the sun rotates around the earth? Is that happening in the state of Mississippi? And if it's not happening, shouldn't we make sure that our students are not taught that the sun rotates around the earth or that the earth rotates around the sun? Should we do that?
Senator Blunt, we should not tell a child that they are inferior to another. That's basically all this bill says.
Are you aware of any teachers in the state of Mississippi that are teaching that the laws of thermodynamics don't apply, on Friday afternoon? Are there any teachers in the state of Mississippi that are teaching their students that the laws of thermodynamics don't apply on Friday afternoon?
I'm not sure that I understand your question.
Are there any teachers in the state of Mississippi? Somebody's trying to get out of the basement. Are there any teachers in the state of Mississippi that are teaching their students that the capital of Alabama is Birmingham? And is that going on in this state?
I'm not sure how this is germane to the bill, sir.
It's germane in so fact that this is not happening, and we trust our teachers to teach, and we don't need to pass laws to prohibit what's not being done. But I'll move on. You mentioned the state auditor. It's been my observation that the state auditor, in addition to his many duties assigned by statute, has time to roam the halls of libraries across the state and identify books that show how white people in Mississippi have been victims of racism. He's got time to do that, and I'm curious about what you envision the auditor doing with regard to this bill if a teacher is alleged to have been violating this statute.
Well, that will be handled by the school district. And then the school district...
So let's just say, hypothetically, this actually happens at some point in the future. And a teacher is teaching this, that a race is superior to another. A parent would lodge a complaint with the local school board, and let's say they identify it's really happening. It's really going on. The funds then appropriated to that school district would be withheld. Is that correct?
That would be up to the state auditor's office.
Mr. White. Mr. White, the state auditor.
At the present time, yes, sir.
Okay. So we haven't talked much about our universities. So at Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Jackson State, any of our 8 public universities, if a teacher is found in violation of this, as determined, I guess, the analogous situation would be the college board.
Yes, sir.
That this has happened. How much, let's say it's happening at Mississippi State. How much money would the state auditor withhold from Mississippi State University? Their annual appropriation?
That would be up to state auditor.
Okay. I want to touch on something else that I don't think has been raised in the questions thus far. There's been a lot made of the racial implications of this bill, and you stated, and I'll ask you to state again, what is the purpose of this bill as it regards race and instruction?
That no child is superior or inferior to another.
So no race is different from any other race with regard to education?
Correct.
Okay. I'm concerned about what this could do to the practice of religion in our state, because religion under your bill on line 30 is the same as race. And so if we're going to teach, if we cannot teach anything but that no race is any different or any better than any other race, which you've said, what does that do to our school districts with regard to religion? Can they teach, or in anything that they practice, or any clubs that they have, or any activities that they engage in, and anything that they do before a football game, and any clubs that they want to have at their school, can they not do anything that would suggest that any religion is superior to any other religion at that school? Because race and religion are equally placed in the bill. Wouldn't that be true?
That would be up to the school districts.
So if anybody, any parent in a school district feels that any religion is being privileged or highlighted or given the opportunity to speak or pray or gather, and their religion is not, and by the practices of that school district or that university, that one religion is granted prominence over any other religion, that complaint would be well-founded under this legislation. And that school that promotes or privileges that religion would be in danger of losing their funds, or they would have to cease that practice. They could no longer treat any religion differently than any other religion. or they would lose all their state funding. Is that correct?
It says that none of them can say that they are superior or inferior to another.
And if the practices and traditions of that school have historically affirmed one religion over another religion, they can no longer engage in those practices because everything that they do in their daily lives and in their schools and at their sporting events and in their extracurricular activities suggests that one religion is superior to certain other religions that may exist in this great big world. And they have to stop that, or all of their funding will cease. Is that correct?
That would be up to the school district.
Or the college board, or whatever the governing authority is. And then they'd be in court. If that one parent who might adhere to a different religion does not agree with the decisions of that school board or the college board, will be in court. And what would be at stake would be all the funding for that school or that university. Is that correct?
That would be up to them.
Okay. Thank you, Senator McClendon.
Senator Barnett, you have a question?
Introduction out of order, Mr. President.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would direct your attention to the north side of the gallery, I will ask Mr. Sajeric Lee and Mr. Mike Hodge to please stand. And I would like for the Senate these are the president of the CWA of Hattiesburg and also the legislative political person from the Hattiesburg group, and on behalf of Senator Robert Jackson and myself, we would like to make them welcome to our state capitol.
Welcome to your Senate. All right. Senator Jordan, did you have another question, Senator Jordan?
I want to speak against the bill whenever time.
Yes, sir. Senator McMahon, you have a question?
Introduction out of order.
You're recognized.
On behalf of Senator Sparks and myself, we would like to welcome ICC history instructor Chris Stevenson in the South Gallery. I ask that he'd stand. I ask my colleagues give him a warm welcome to his state Senate.
Welcome to your Senate. Okay, seeing no further questions at this time, anyone would like to speak? And I believe Senator Norwood was the first to ask.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't take lightly coming down here. I think I'm very quiet, most unassuming person. But we're talking about something this morning that is very disturbing. And I can assure you, I have a folder full of information relative to critical race theory. And it all is very different. So what is critical race theory? It's a moving target. So we're going to put our teachers in a position where they're going to be afraid to teach and teach the truth. Massive exodus from our schools. On Monday, we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King's holiday, and I'll just read a couple of his quotes. Dr. King says, "Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will." Dr. King further said that the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by those that people, but the silence over the good of the good people. In a few days, we'll be celebrating Black History Month. And I tell you the truth, I know many of you could care less of what we say this morning. I know that. So I'm going to cut through the chase. I'm not going to be up here all day. I'm going to give you a few points and I'm going to sit down because your mind is made up what you're going to do. And frankly, it doesn't matter. It's just like a train. You're going to run over us, but in the end, good is always going to prevail. So I want to apologize to the teachers for the position we're putting them in. I want to apologize to the young men and women in our schools. I want to apologize for our young students that are going to be running the balls up and down the field, running up and down the basketball courts at many of your institutions of learning. I want to apologize to the citizens of Mississippi because frankly, we're better than this. Would you be amazed that on January the 1st, 1948, Senator James Eastland of Mississippi led a successful campaign to block an anti-lynching bill, which would have held members of lynch mobs and local law enforcement officers accountable for their role in racial terror lynching. Now, I'll say to anybody that will listen, I don't need nobody in this chamber or anywhere to tell my children that they are important. I don't need nobody to tell them. I tell them that every day. I don't need no teacher telling them that. So I'm not going to stand up here and try to dictate or support any dictation that would do otherwise. In the court of law, we talk about the preponderance of evidence. We have no evidence of this taking place in our school districts. No evidence. The superintendent of education said she's not aware of it. It doesn't exist. 26 superintendents that I have talked to said they're not aware of it. It does not exist. Over 50 pastors that I have talked to said they're not aware of it. And I'm sure there are countless more. So what we're doing is we're creating a problem, a solution for a problem that does not exist. So in closing, I'd just like to say one last thing. We're better than this. We are better than this. And at the end of the day, like I said, good is going to always win. Good is going to win. And after today, we're going to rise, we're going to go to bed tonight, and we're going to rise up tomorrow. And racism exists when we go to bed, and racism is going to exist when we wake up. But it's up to us to make a decision what we can do about it. And if we say it does not exist, we're lying to ourselves. But what can we do about it? And this bill does not do anything to address the division that we have here in our state. A couple years ago, we took down the flag. We took down the flag. And in taking down the flag, we said we're ready to move forward together. Well, I can assure you, all the steps that we made moving forward, we're about to rescind those steps. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Next, Senator England, would you like to speak on the bill? Yes. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Friends, I don't come to the well a whole lot, not as much as I'd like to. I like speaking in front of you guys, but one time I came up here and this was in 2020 when we were debating the issue of our state flag. And I turned and I pointed at the old flag that was standing, that was on the stand behind us, and I said, you know, if we go any longer on this issue, that state flag is going to tear us apart. And I meant it, okay? And when I voted on that state flag, one story that was in my heart was a friend of mine, an African-American gentleman that I respected very much from Mississippi State University, told me when we were talking about the old flag, when it came up in a conversation, this was when I was in college, this was 2003, maybe 2004. He said, Jeremy, you and I won't ever see that flag the same, because when I see that flag, I think of my kids one day. Neither one of us had kids that we knew of at the time. And so he did not want his children walking into a schoolhouse under that flag. And he told me, he said, you know, Jeremy, that flag, that emblem on that flag was flown in the faces of my grandfather and my father to say, you know what, your kids can't go to school at that same school. And that hit me in the heart. And I said, you know what, that's a very good way to look at that. I don't want your kids going to school under that same emblem that was put in your face to say you can't go into that same school. And I say that to say this. I think Senator McClendon has a very good bill for us here. I've looked at it, and look, I've done my homework. I knew this issue was coming up. I bought the book, Critical Race Theory, this past summer, and I read it twice. You know, I wanted to know what this theory was about. And this theory worries me. It worries me a lot. But I'll say I think I agree with Senator Hickman when he said, does this bill ban the teaching of critical race theory? I don't think it does, Senator. What this bill does is it bans the implementation of critical race theory in our schools, and that's a good thing. That's why I think Senator McClendon gave us a very good bill here. I think when Senator McClendon references in his bill that no student should be taught that they are superior or inferior to another student, that bans the implementation of this theory. Do we need to ban the teaching of this theory? I think everybody should go out and get the book and read about it and see for themselves exactly what the theory says. Because the theory, and we can disagree or agree, the theory is very un-American. When I bought this book, I also bought the Communist Manifesto, which I read in high school. You know, oddly enough, we didn't ban the reading of Communist Manifesto in high school, and I'm glad we didn't. Because I could see how when we try to teach that, you know, there's two classes of people, a bourgeoisie and a proletariat, and they're inherently against each other. And we need to, you know, they need to fight against each other, and we need to have an overturn of a power, so to speak. Well, that's not right. That's not what our country was founded on. Now, I know we've had our faults, and we need to keep talking about them. We absolutely do. But we don't need to talk to them or talk about them from a stance of superiority or inferiority. That's not American. Again, I signed on as a co-author of this bill, as a co-sponsor. I think Senator McClendon did a very good job. I've seen some bills out there that I don't agree with that try to address this dangerous point. But we don't defeat things by running from them. We face them. Critical race theory, whether it's being taught in Mississippi or not, or whether it's being implemented in Mississippi or not, is not as important to my constituents as the fact that it's out there. You know, this past week, we in this chamber sent on a medical marijuana bill, hoping we become the 36th state to implement a medical marijuana program. We don't have that now. We looked at 35 other states and we saw what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and we brought that in. We've done that here too, I think. We've got a very, very well-tailored bill, I can't say that enough, that I think is in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King, this bill, in the way that it's written. When Dr. King said, I look to a day when people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, I think that is reflected in this bill. No one is superior to another based on the color of their skin. I keep a picture of my family on my desk because I love them very much. My kids are who I think about when I think about the future and what I want to do. I want to leave Mississippi a better place for them. I walk by everyone else's desk, you know, Senator Hillman, all my friends in here. I walk by your desk and I see pictures of your family, and I see pictures of your kids, and they are important to us. They ought not be taught that they're inferior or superior We don't need that garbage in our schools. We don't need that garbage in Mississippi. And I think this bill is helping take care of that, where we're seeing the implementation of this in our news and in our country. So I'm proud to support this bill. I want to keep this short, but I did want to say my reasons for supporting the bill. I know that the definitions of critical race theory come from many different places. I went straight to a source and got them from the book. And so I've done my research, I've done my homework on behalf of my constituents in District 51, and I'm going to support this bill because I want to make sure that when my kids go into a schoolhouse, and when my friend from Mississippi State, who does have a lovely family of his own now, they don't live in the state of Mississippi, but if they did, I want them going into a schoolhouse as well, under our new flag, learning our history. It's a tough history. It's always going to be a tough history, and we need to learn that. But not learning it from a stance of superiority or inferiority. Learning it from a stance of history and moving on. And I think this bill will help us do that. It'll help us put this issue behind us quickly in this session, because race is always going to be tough for us to talk about, especially here in Mississippi. But I think Senator McClendon did a good job presenting the bill today, and I'm proud to support the bill.
Senator Jordan, do you still wish to speak on the bill?
It is sad that we have wasted so much time on something that is not even necessary. Mississippi has come a long way together. And to create something that may happen or may not happen at this time, we're getting along fine. If anybody have suffered from racism, it is people of color. And we feel that you don't need this bill. It appears that it's an accusation of your own creation. We're satisfied without it. What do you need it for? And we have been the victims of it. So we cannot continue, ladies and gentlemen, Christian friends, my colleagues, of stumbling into the future backwards. And that's what this bill does. Everybody said, look at Mississippi. We got more important things to do. We need to show more cohesiveness in progress. I'm fortunate enough to have taught in the public school system, science, chemistry, physical science, all the science, for 33 years, 20 years in integrated schools. I taught everybody's children. Many people didn't like it, but the children loved the way I taught, and they learned. And I see some of them today, and they appreciate it. But many parents didn't want me there. But the children convinced them that they love their science teacher, the way he teaches. So what I'm saying to us, we cannot continue to stumble into the future backwards. And that's what this bill does. That's what it does. We don't need it. Few people may be a little fear, but you as a senator in that area convinced them that everything is all right. And there's 3 million of us here, approximately. And it's about 38% of people look just like me. And we have gone through purgatory and back. 1890 Constitution stripped us of everything. But we're able to forgive and forget. So let's work together and move our state forward. And we can do that. We can be positive. We don't need skunk odor. Skunk odor, you don't know you're around until you smell it. So we don't need anything like that. Let that die. And let's build our state cohesively together. And we can do it. So time is of essence. I don't care what to do in other places. Let's make Mississippi shine. We are Mississippians. Let's work together and let that bill die. It's not needed. It opened old wounds. And finally, we're going to lose teachers because a lot of teachers say, I ain't no teach no history, no, you know what that bill said. I don't want to lose my job. So you're going to run teachers away when we need them. So I don't care how many people sign on to it. It's not needed. Because we've come too far, we got more important things to do. My colleague and my friend, I appreciate it if you withdraw this bill.
Senator
And let's move on. Thank you, may God bless.
Senator Blackman, do you have a question? I'll put you on the list. Thank you.
Anyone have a question?
No questions.
Thank you very much, and I hope you will listen to what we're saying. We don't need it. Let's move ahead together. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Horn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I will not be very long. I will admit that this bill is a lot less onerous than I expected it to be, yet I still see danger in it. And for that reason, I hope that we don't support this measure. We talk about critical race theory. And here's my understanding of what critical race theory is all about. It is a cross-discipline, intellectual and social movement that seeks to examine the intersection between race and law in the United States. That's all it is, as far as I can see. And I think that the whole situation of it is based on the founding of this country and some of the precepts that we as a country implicitly or explicitly accepted, chief among which we justified slavery because the powers that be judged black people to be racially inferior. And a lot of our laws, a lot of our systems, a lot of our customs, a lot of our practices have been impacted by that. Critical race theory wants to look at how race and law impacts our economy, how it impacts our criminal justice system and who we lock up and who we let go. It impacts our healthcare system and who we decide is deserving of adequate healthcare. It impacts our housing policies, where you can live and where you cannot live, even to this day. We don't even have, in this state, a fair housing law in the state of Mississippi. The only state in the country that doesn't have a fair housing law. It impacts how we look at our access to education. So I have a question. If we pass this bill, can we no longer teach about James O. Eastland? James O. Eastland, who made a career out of advocating white supremacy. Can we teach that anymore? Because he advocated that one race was better than the other. Can we teach that in our schools these days? Can we teach about the Sovereignty Commission, an official state agency of the state of Mississippi that promoted white supremacy? Can we teach that anymore? I don't know. But I do know that we need to continue to examine these intersections about race and law, and how this whole issue of race has impacted us, how it drives us apart, how it separates us. And no matter how much we say things have changed, we all know implicitly that we have a long way to go to get this thing right. I think this bill is going to put a chilling effect on that journey. I think it's going to slow us down on coming together. And I think it's going to drive a wedge between us that doesn't need to be driven.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Blackman, you wish to speak on the bill?
Thank you, Mr. President. I had not planned to speak on this, but when I heard someone come up here and quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I felt compelled to come. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "There's such a thing as the freedom of exhaustion. Some people are so worn down by the yoke of oppression that they give up. The oppressed must never allow the conscience of the oppressor to slumber. To accept injustice or segregation passively is to say to the oppressor that his actions are morally right." This bill is not morally right. I heard this gentleman say he talked to his African-American friend, and I guess everybody has an African-American friend. There are 14 black senators in this chamber. And these 14 black senators are telling you that this bill is morally wrong. But yet, you can ignore the thoughts, the positions of these 14 members of this body. So it must be something if all 14 of us feel, or think, Senator McClendon, that something is wrong with this bill.
Thank you, Senator Blackman. Let's see. I believe that's Senator McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the opportunity to speak just for a moment, and I recognize that I won't be speaking to change hearts and minds in here. I think the only reason I rise now is to do my best to set a historical record for people that perhaps may be watching or how this is actually reported for history's sake. I do recognize the difficulty of the subject. It's sensitive. It always is. Race is always sensitive in this state. It should be. There is no more important responsibility for a government, no more important responsibility for a jurisdiction or a state than the protection of one's civil liberties. It should be preeminent, paramount. In fact, if the state exists at all, it's for that reason, to make sure that everyone is treated equally. Mississippi, obviously, over the years has not satisfied those criteria very well. This bill does nothing to prohibit the teaching of what was, the objective facts of what was. What it does attempt to do is to make sure that children, by the plain language of the bill, aren't told they're inferior. What it does do is to tell our children by the plain language of the bill that they are equal. I'm trying to find the mischief in this language and I don't see it. And the only comparison I can give you is if this bill is introduced in the 1950s, it's seen as the most dynamic piece of civil rights legislation in this state's history. Because it prohibits the teaching of discrimination. It prohibits the teaching that people are somehow inferior. So what exactly is at stake here? What are we debating? Because it can't be the language of the bill. There has to be something else. And that's my concern, because it appears If we can't agree on simple words like these, then politics has really entrenched itself in our debate and our discourse. And that's okay. We're supposed to be political by nature. That's why we're here, to speak on political matters. But the framework of CRT isn't conducive to equality. The framework of CRT is conducive to victimhood. And I'll give you just a couple of examples. I had the good fortune of playing a lot of sports over my life. And when coaches would teach us, they would always tell us a handful of things. The first is, with hard work, there's nothing you can't do. That meritocracy itself is more important than being given a position. You have to earn the position. But not a moment did any of my coaches on any of my teams tell me, you know what, the odds are stacked against you, son. At no point for a moment did they tell you, you don't have a chance, son. They told me that if I worked hard enough, I could achieve anything, and that's what I tried to do. And in so many ways, that's what this bill does. Critical race theory is a postmodern concept based in subjectivity. And just to wrap it all up, our kids need objective facts, not subjective notions of theory. There's only so many hours in the day, only so many lessons a teacher can teach. The taxpayers of this state have demanded to us very clearly, and to Senator McClendon very clearly, that our children learn objective facts that make them prosperous, that makes them able to achieve, and not to waste time on theoretical notions that have no objective basis in fact. And that's all this bill does. I recognize it's sensitive, I recognize it's problematic, but until we see objective proof that critical race theory's framework is accurate, it doesn't belong in Mississippi's classrooms. I support the bill, and I hope you do as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator, I think we may have a few questions. Senator Derek Simmons, do you have a question? Okay, then next, Senator Hickman. Senator Hickman, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. President.
Do you yield Senator Hickman for a question?
Yes, sir.
Just a couple of questions. One, I think you spoke about the content of the bill and how you're concerned at where the comments and questions and debates are going regarding this bill. So would you agree that within this chamber there's mass confusion about what this bill actually does?
I don't think so. There doesn't seem to be any confusion. The language is pretty plain.
So does it seem that several different senators have different interpretation of what this bill does?
You know, the English language is the English language, and it speaks clearly to what is allowed and what's disallowed. There may be different interpretations, but those seem to be more political than they are based in the language.
And did you not have an exchange with the actual maker of the bill where you tried to coach him on what critical race theory is and what the bill actually does, and it seemed that y'all were on two separate pages as well?
Not quite. I think probably when I was talking about postmodern philosophy, that was perhaps confusing. That's not his fault, that's mine. And yes, to the extent that we ask leading questions, lawyers do that all the time. In fact, you're asking me a leading question right now, so I think that's pretty good.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Butler, did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, question for Senator McDaniel.
You Senator Butler.
Yes, sir, of course.
Senator McDaniel, do you agree that in the United States of America, there's a battle between the haves and the have-nots?
No, sir, not necessarily. Let me explain that.
Okay.
I think you may be on to something, a point I probably should have made during my discussion earlier. Disparities in income, which is what I'm assuming you're discussing.
Right.
Disparities in income are perhaps the most natural thing in all of human history. It's always been the case. Poverty is the status quo. Mm-hmm. So the question we have to ask ourselves as policymakers or historians is, how do people, for whatever reason, have upward mobility, economically speaking? Poverty has been the status quo for years, and so naturally when some people, whether it's through an education, whether it's through an inheritance, whether it's through some privilege that has nothing to do with race, achieve some degree of prominence or prosperity, those disparities exist. The question is not whether disparities exist. The question is whether there's enough capital and money in the system to pull everyone up eventually. And the key there is not to trout those in the lower classes, to make sure they have a chance to get to the middle class. We trout people in those lower classes when we teach the theories of victimhood. We make them believe there is no upward mobility, there is no chance at success. And so to the point, when we teach these things, unfortunately, the unintended consequence could be that we keep people in that same present position. But to your point, there's always going to be some disparity in income, some disparity in economic outcomes, because we're all very different people.
I agree. I agree with you 200%, Senator McDaniel. Now, in there, what happens, and that's why I'm afraid of this bill, what happens, it gives those individuals an opportunity to carry it to court. And in our justice system, it is blatantly clear that we have an unfair justice system that exists. And January the 6th of last year was a typical example of that. And with those things in place, how is it possible for a person to teach in the classroom? I've been in the classroom teaching myself. Teach in the classroom, and there's someone that's in charge perceiving that he or she is teaching the wrong method.
Yes, sir.
And then it goes to court.
Yes, sir. As to your original proposition, I don't believe our justice system is inherently unfair.
Okay.
I disagree with that. What took place decades ago was one thing. What we've created of late is a relatively fair justice system. Are there going to be various distinctions from state to state, courtroom to courtroom? That happens because judges are fallible. But that individual judge being fallible doesn't mean the entire system is corrupted. And I think that, again, is one of the errors of critical race theory. It takes singular examples and applies it to a whole spectrum of individuals. And that's not a fair assumption, which is one of the reasons it shouldn't be taught.
Thank you, Senator McDaniel.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Senator McDaniel? Seeing none, Senator McClendon, you're recognized to close on the bill.
First, I want to thank everyone that asked questions, participated in debate, as well as gave their heartfelt experiences. I believe this entire Senate body agrees on one thing, that systematic racism should not be taught to our children. And with that, I move for final passage by use of the morning roll call.
Yes, Senator Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a roll call.
Okay. Roll call has been requested. Need 6 or more to stand. I'm sorry, final passage. My apologies. Final passage roll will be taken. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Barnett, Barrett, Blackman, Blackwell, Blunt, Boyd, Branning, Bryan, Butler, up to 36, Butler to 38, Carter, Kaufman, Chazanall, Chisholm, DeBar, Delano, England, Fillingane, Frazier, Harkins, Hickman, Hill, Hobson, Horn, Jackson, Johnson, Jordan, Kirby, McCon, McDaniel, McClendon, McMahon, Michelle, Moran, Norwood, Parker, Parks, Polk, Seymour, Simmons of the 12, Simmons of the 13, Sojourner, Sparks, Suber, Tate, Thomas, Thompson, Turner Ford, Whaley, Wiggins, Williams, Younger. Barnett. Blackman. Boyd. Bryan. Butler to 36. Butler to 38. Chisholm. Frazier. Harkins. Hickman. Hill. Hobson. Horn. Jackson. Jordan. Kirby. Norwood. Parker. Parks. Seymour. Simmons of the 12. Simmons of the 13. Thomas. Turner Ford. Voting yes or yay. Barrett. Blackwell.
Nobody. I don't have anybody else.
Who's going to the vote? Voting yes or yay. Barrett, Blackwell, Boyd, Branning, Carter, Kaufman, Chazanall, Chisholm, DeBar, Delano, England, Fillingane, Harkins, Johnson, Kirby, McCollum, McDaniel, McLendon, McMahon, Michelle, Moran, Polk, Sojourner, Sparks, Suber, Tate, Thompson, Whaley, Wiggins, Williams, and Younger. Voting no or nay, Blunt and Bryan.
Senator Parker, to the vote.
Vote.
You recognize.
I don't think my vote was heard. I vote aye.
Senator Parker votes aye. Senator Moran,
Yes, I'd like to be added as a co-author, please.
we will at the appropriate time.
Won't go off.
By a vote of 32 to 2, Senate Bill 2113 passes. I think a few people want to be recognized as co-authors. Senator McDaniel, co-author. Senator Moran, co-author. Senator Sojourner, co-author. Any other persons wishing to co-author the bill? Senator Williams, co-author. All right, moving to item 17 on today's calendar. Insurance, Senator Michelle. Pass on items 17, 18, 19, and 20, and they will retain their place on the calendar. Move to item 21 on today's calendar, Senate Bill 2444. Senator DeBar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I call up item 21, Senate Bill 2444, and have its title read.
Ms. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2444, teacher salaries, provide increase to minimum salary.
Make the usual motions.
Senators made the usual motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Senator, you're recognized to proceed.
Move for adoption of the committee sub in lieu of the original bill.
Senator moves for adoption of the committee sub in lieu of the original bill. You're recognized to explain.
Thank you, Mr. President. I bring before you Senate Bill 2444, a bill I think we all can agree on. A lot of hard work has gone into this bill. The Education Committee, need to thank them first and foremost for the hard work that was put into it, listening to hearings. We had some hearings, listening to teachers throughout the state, as well as I'd like to thank the Appropriations Committee and its chairman for finding the money and making sure we had the money for this teacher pay raise bill. This is a bill that appropriates approximately $210 million over 2 years to raise teacher salaries approximately $4,800 for the average teacher. What this salary restructuring does is, based on the data we receive from the Southern Regional Educational Board, as well as teachers throughout the state, is it front loads the salary as well as increases the salaries for our mid-level, mid-year teachers. And so over 2 years and after 2 years, we'll raise the teacher's salary, starting salary from $37,000 to $40,000. We implement these step raises that at year one. And so currently there are no step raises from 0 to 3 years. We have step raises in every year of $500, except for, based on what we heard from our teachers throughout this state, is they would like some incentive, they would like to stay, they would like to remove some of the stagnation that's currently in the state, the pay system. So at 5, 10, 15, and 20 years, we have a big boost of their salaries. If you're a single A teacher, that 5-year increment, you'll get a boost up to $1,325. A 2A, $1,425, 3A, $1,525, and 4A, $1,625. At the 25-year mark, you'll get your $2,500 bonus, basically boost. And so this pay raise bill will affect a vast majority of teachers. This will allow for teachers who are coming out of school to help have more pay, to do what they need to do, and hopefully this will incentivize teachers to go into the teaching profession, as well as incentivize those teachers that we have to stay in Mississippi and not leave. In my case, going to Alabama, others going to Louisiana, Tennessee, and so forth. So there's much more I could say about this bill, but a lot of hard work into it by 2 committees to bring forward a good bill. Also in this bill, the reason it's a committee sub is we added there was a separate bill removing caps on athletic trainers, nurses, audiologists, and pathologists. It does not cost any money. We added that to the bill so we could get that signed at the same time at some point. And with that, I'll yield for questions.
Okay, first, Senator Moran.
Mr. President, move for previous question.
You yield, do what?
Previous question, let's vote.
Senator moves previous question. Yeah, we need to adopt the committee sub before we do that, Senator.
Yeah, I made that motion. I move.
So, yeah, all in favor of adopting the, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Now, Senator Moran, you move previous question? Senator Moran moves previous
question.
I asked for roll call vote.
Roll call.
Well, first previous question, and then we'll do that. So, the previous question, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it. Previous question's been adopted. Now, are there any other questions? I think, call the roll, but first, I think Senator McDaniel, your light was on. All right, 6 or more stand. Oh, it's final passage. I'm sorry, you're right. So, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Barnett, Barrett, Blackman, Blackwell, Blunt, Boyd, Branning, Bryan, Butler to 36, Butler to 38, Carter, Kaufman, Chazanall, Chisholm, DeBar, Delano, England, Fillingham, Frazier, Harkins, Hickman, Hill, Hobson, Horn, Jackson, Johnson, Jordan, Kirby,
Aye.
McCon, McDaniel, McClendon, McMahon, Michelle, Moran, Norwood, Parker, Parks, Polk, Seymour, Simmons of the 12th, Simmons of the 13th, Sojourner, Sparks, Suber, Tate, Thomas, Thompson, Turner Ford, Whaley, Wiggins, Williams, Younger, Barnett, Blackman, Blunt, Bryan, Butler to 36, Butler to 38, Frazier, Hickman, Hill, Horn, Jackson, Jordan, McCon, McDaniel, Norwood, Parks, Seymour, Simmons of the 12, Simmons of the 13, Sojourner, Thomas, Turner Ford. Voting yes or yay. Barrett, Blackwell, Blunt, Boyd, Branning, Bryan, Carter, Kaufman, Chazanall, Chisholm, DeBarn, Delano, England, Fillingane, Harkins, Hobson, Johnson, Kirby, McDaniel, McClendon, McMahon, Michelle, Moran, Parker, Pope, Sojourner Sparks, Suber, Tate, Thompson, Whaley, Wiggins, Williams, Younger.
Okay, Senator Blackwell, did you wish to be recognized?
Yes, sir. I'd just like to be added as a co-author.
At the proper time. So wait for the vote. Senator McCollum said that he was here and voted aye. Please.
Thank you. Sorry about that. No problem. Okay, let me count. 26.
Senator Wade, all right. Hold on. The bill has passed 35 yeas and 0 nays. Now we'll do co-authors, Senator Blackwell. Oh my. Okay, Buck, come up here and help me make sure I don't miss anyone. All right, we'll start here. Senator Tate, Senator Moran, Senator Whaley, Senator Chazanall, Senator Harkins, Senator Fillingane, Senator McMahon, Senator Younger. Hold on, they got to catch up with us. Or did you get Chazanall and Fillingane? Did you get those? Okay, then let's see, Senator Parker, Senator Boyd, Senator Williams. You ready? All right, Senator Kaufman, Senator McMahon, Senator Carter, Senator Barrett, Senator McClendon. Too many Macs going on here. And who else? Let's see. I've done a blank.
John.
Thompson. I just went blank. Thompson, Senator Wiggins, Senator Suber. Anyone else? Anyone else who wish to be named as a co-author? All right, those will be recorded. I believe now it's Senator Hobson. No, I'm sorry.
Mr. President, if I'd ask for immediate release of Senate Bill 2444.
All in favor of immediate release, say aye. All opposed, no. Immediate release is granted. All right, so you do not wish to be recognized. So I guess we'll go next to announcements.